Hello! Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Josh. Welcome. Here we like to talk about books, so if you're into that, then please stay and enjoy. Join in on the conversation in the comments below or subscribe if you like the content. Today we're going to be talking about the latest books that I have added to my TBR. If you're not familiar, TBR means to be read, which basically means that these are the books that you want to read, or the books that will be read in hopefully the near future. However, I am a notorious TBR adder. I have almost 1,000 books in my TBR, which is pretty bad. However, I guess that just depends on what your perception of a TBR really is. Personally, I think it doesn't matter how many books a person has in their TBR. It's like movies. People want to watch a lot of different movies. I want to read a lot of different books because I think they're exciting and new and fresh. Some of these might not be brand new, I will admit that. However, they are certainly ones that appeal to me, so they're new to me. So anyway, without much further ado, let's check them out. So the first book is called Bad Diaspora Poems, and it is a collection by Momtaza Mehri. I don't typically read poetry, but I'm not against it. I've read poetry in the past, and I'm actually waiting for a poetry collection to come into availability at the library. So I do read poems. It's just not my preferred genre. However, I am making an exception with this because this actually sounds really interesting, especially since it is all about diaspora literature, and I don't know too much about diaspora literature. I have read immigrant literature before, but this one seems to be a little bit more niche, and I'm here for it. So let's take a look here. It has 4.38 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, which is quite high. And the blurb says that it was shortlisted for the Forward Prize in 2023. That's pretty cool. Diaspora is witnessing a murder without getting blood on your shirt. But what does it mean to write diaspora poetry? Okay, now we're getting into the actual meat of the sandwich here. Momtaza Mehri's debut collection poses this question, taking us from Mogadishu to Naples, Lampedusa to London, mixing her own family's experience with the stories of many others across 19th and 20th century Somalia. Bad Diaspora Poems confronts the ambivalent nature of speaking for those who have been left behind. We meet the poet, the translator, the refugee, the exile, and the diaspora kid attempting to transcend their cliched angst. Told in lyric, prose, and text messages, and taking place in living rooms and marketplaces, on buses and balconies, on transatlantic journeys, and online, these are essential poems about our diasporic age. That's so cool! I think this sounds right up my alley. I love reading things from other countries. The fact that this takes place in Somalia is really cool. I don't think I've ever read. I don't think I've ever read anything from Somalia, so that'll be a new experience. And the fact that it is about culture and language, which are two of my most favorite things in life, I think that's super cool. I think that this will be a very fascinating book to read, and the fact that it is all poetry, I think will just add to the beauty of something that already sounds quite beautiful. So I'm excited. Let's see the next one here. The next one is called Behind You is the Sea, and this was written by Susan Muadi Daraj. This has 4.16 out of 5 stars. And this book belongs to the short story anthology genre, and it is also literary fiction and historical fiction. So this should be interesting. Something that I've been wanting to do for quite some time now is to read more short story anthologies, because I love short stories. I love reading them when they're written by my friends and family members. I love reading them in short story journals and magazines, and I also just love writing them. So I want to become better versed in the short story anthology as a genre. Let's see here, the blurb. It says, it is an exciting debut novel that gives voice to the diverse residents of a Palestinian-American community in Baltimore. From young activists in conflict with their traditional parents to the poor who clean for the rich. Lives which intersect across divides of class, generation, and religion. Funny and touching, Behind You is the Sea brings us into the homes and lives of 3 main families, the Baladists, the Salamis, and the Anmars, Palestinian immigrants who've all found a different welcome in America. Their various fates and struggles cause their community dynamic to sizzle and sometimes explode. The wealthy Anwar family employs young Maysoon Baladi, whose family struggles financially, to clean up after their spoiled teenagers. Meanwhile, Marcus Salome, whose aunt married into the wealthy Anwar family, confronts his father in an effort to protect his younger sister for dishonoring the family. Only a trip to Palestine, where Marcus experiences an unexpected and dramatic transformation, can bridge this seemingly unbridgeable divide between two generations. Behind You Is the Sea faces stereotypes about Palestinian culture head on, and shifting perspectives to weave a complex social fabric replete with weddings, funerals, broken hearts, and devastating secrets. This sounds so interesting, but this sounds really, really good. Interestingly, it says that this is a novel, but it says it's a short story anthology. And recently I've been wondering if those can be one and the same. Because depending on how much interweaving there is in a short story anthology, which it sounds like there is a lot here, which is really cool, and I'm all for that. I'm excited to read that. It could potentially take the form of a novel. Interesting. Next one. This one is called The Bullet Swallower by Elizabeth Gonzalez James. Has 3.85 out of 5 stars, and it belongs to the genres of historical fiction, magical realism, fantasy, literary fiction, as well as a western, which I really don't like westerns. But this book sounds so interesting to me. So hopefully this exception that I am making for this book will be worth it, because it sounds cool. I mean, listen to the title, The Bullet Swallower. That sounds so wild, doesn't it? I feel like it could mean something much more profound than what it's actually saying, because it just sounds very, very, poetic. But let's actually see. What is this book about? It says, in 1895, Antonio Sonoro is the latest in a long line of ruthless men. He's good with his gun and is drawn to trouble, but he's also out of money and out of options. A drought has ravaged the town of Dorado, Mexico, where he lives with his wife and children. And so when he hears about a train laden with gold and other treasures, he sets off for Houston to rob it, with his younger brother Hugo in tow. But when the heist goes awry and Hugo is killed by the Texas Rangers, Antonio finds himself launched into a quest for revenge that endangers not only his life and his family, but his eternal soul. In 1964, Jaime Sonoro is Mexico's most renowned actor and singer. But his comfortable life is disrupted when he discovers a book that purports to tell the entire story of his family, beginning with Cain and Abel. In its ancient pages, Jaime learns about the multitude of horrific crimes committed by his ancestors. And when the same mysterious figure from Antonio's life timeline shows up in Mexico City, Jaime realizes that he may be the one who has to pay for his ancestors' crimes, unless he can discover the true story of his grandfather Antonio, the legendary bandido El Dragabalas, the Bullet Swallower. A family saga that's epic in scope and magical in its blood, and based loosely on the author's own great-grandfather, interesting, The Bullet Swallower tackles border politics, intergenerational trauma, and the legacies of racism and colonialism in a lush setting and stunning prose that asks who pays for the sins of our ancestors and whether it is possible to be better than our ancestors. I was actually anticipating these different themes when I was reading the blurb here. So I'm glad that it actually mentions them, that just confirms these elements that I find really interesting and I definitely want to read about. And it also confirms the fact that I thought that this kind of sounded a little speculative, which lends to that literary fiction quality. So this is exciting. I really want to read this. Okay, so the next one here is called You Are What You Watch by Walter Hickey. This one has 3.8 out of 5 stars, and it is actually nonfiction and belongs to the category of psychology, history, sociology, and film. So this is very, very different from what I typically read, but I just thought that this sounded so pertinent to everyday life, and I just felt like it was particularly representative of the current zeitgeist. Right now, society is so very much based on watching television, watching streaming services, watching movies. And so I thought that this one seemed pretty relevant, and I thought I could learn a thing or two from it. And it's also something that I've been really wondering about privately. So it's kind of cool that someone has written about it, and it's not just me thinking these things, but perhaps it is something that has some sort of merit. So it'll be interesting to check this book out. It says here that data expert Walter Hickey explains the power of entertainment to change our biology, our beliefs, how we see ourselves, and how nations gain power through entertainment. Anyone who has ever watched or read something profound and moving knows that entertainment can affect us in surprising and significant ways. But did you know that our most popular forms of entertainment can have a direct physical effect on us? A measurable impact on society, geopolitics, the economy, and even the future itself? In You Are What You Watch, Walter Hickey, Pulitzer Prize winner and former chief culture writer at acclaimed data site 538, proves how what we watch and read and listen to has a far greater effect on us and the world at large than we imagine. Doesn't that sound fascinating? I'm excited to read that, and it's not too long either, which I'm pleased by because I'm not a huge nonfiction reader, so the fact that it's shorter, I think it'll be perfect for the appetite, you know what I mean? Lastly, I have a book called Goodbye for Now by Lori Frankel. I feel like this book has kind of been haunting me. This book I have been seeing everywhere. I don't know if it is really popular per se because I haven't seen anyone talk about it, but I've just been seeing it pop up in like ads on Goodreads. I've been seeing it pop up on ads on Amazon. I've been seeing it pop up in social media. And it's weird because this book was actually published, how long ago? 12 years ago? So it's not like this is really being pushed by the author, I wouldn't imagine, or the publishing house. I think it's really just the algorithm. I think it's just technology watching me, seeing, you know, this is what you might be interested in through cookies and various other software. This one I added to my TBR recently because I finally read about it and I was like, oh, yeah, this sounds like something I'd read. So this one here has 3.59 out of 5 stars, and it belongs to the science fiction, the romance, as well as the contemporary fiction genres. So let's read what it is about. It says it is in the spirit of One Day. Okay, One Day. That is a new TV show that was just recently released based on the book, which was also turned into a movie with Anne Hathaway. Maybe that's why it's popping up. Because if this is similar to One Day and One Day is new, that would make sense why it is everywhere right now. It's thematically similar. Okay, so in the spirit of One Day comes a fresh and warm-hearted love story for the 21st century. Sometimes the end is just the beginning. Sam Elling works for an internet dating company, but he still can't get a date. So he creates an algorithm that will match you with your soulmate. Sam meets the love of his life, a coworker named Meredith, but he also gets fired when the company starts losing all their customers to Mr. and Mrs. Right. When Meredith's grandmother, Livy, dies suddenly, Sam uses his ample free time to create a computer program that will allow Meredith to have one last conversation with her grandmother. Mining from all her correspondence, email, Facebook, texts, Skype, Sam constructs a computer simulation of Livy who can respond to email or video chat just as if she were still alive. It's not supernatural, it's computer science. Meredith loves it, and the couple begins to wonder if this is something that could help more people through their grief. And thus, the company Repose is born. The business takes off, but for every person who just wants to say goodbye, there is someone who can't let go. In the meantime, Sam and Meredith's, oh, that name is so hard to say for some reason, Meredith. In the meantime, Sam and Meredith's affection for one another deepens into the kind of love that once tasted, you can't live without. But what if one of them suddenly had to? This entertaining novel delivers a charming and bittersweet romance as well as a lump-in-the-throat exploration of the nature of love, loss, and life, both real and computer simulated. Maybe nothing was meant to last forever. But then again, sometimes love takes on a life of its own. This sounds very interesting, and it's kind of weird because I have been reading a lot of books about grief and death recently, so the fact that this has popped up is kind of creepy. While it does appeal to me in its scope, it is kind of weird that I've been seeing it everywhere. Sometimes technology freaks me out. Reminds me of the book Feed. If you know, you know. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me today for listening to the books that I have recently added to my TBR. I thought that this was a cool little tag in the booktube space, so I wanted to respond to it with this video. Plus, it's just fun to talk about the latest books that you're eyeing, you know? If any of these books sound interesting to you, write it in the comments too. I look forward to reading them and responding. But until next time, take care. Have a wonderful day, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you are, and enjoy reading. Enjoy your books. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.